Welcome to Actually Controller, the podcast that is actually Controller, and we are actually in control of everything you are hearing right now. I'm so very sorry.
What up, guys? Is that how we're going to start it
This
out?
is a great start already.
Everybody's laughing.
Oh,
Just
God.
Steve.
Okay, what episode
What up,
number?
everybody? Welcome back to Actually Controller, episode 14.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, we're getting along here.
Yeah, we're getting along. Tonight you got Steve
Hello, doggy.
and
You have Chad.
And Chris.
we have a special guest tonight, the one and only silent sixth member who's never silent when we're around him. Member of Controller, Austin Putt. Hi, Austin.
Would you like to say hi?
Hello.
Hello.
Announce yourself, sir. Announce yourself.
I'm Austin, and I've dealt with these guys against my will for a very
Paid
long
against
time.
his will.
Against this
I guess I'll take
yeah,
your
there's
money.
some financial, financial agreement involved.
Yeah. So, yes, for over 11 years now, we have almost exclusively been working with this guy for pretty much anything you've ever heard, short of a couple different releases.
Yeah.
It's pretty much always been Austin at the helm. So, if you hate how we sound, it's his fault.
Thank
If you love how we sound,
It's also my fault.
It's his fault. So,
Yeah.
We learn well.
Yeah. Well,
He was schooling us today. That's why he's in here.
yep. Preparation, and we get schooled for the preparation.
that's what you get.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Well, you're,
Bunch of your welcomes everywhere.
So, yes,
This
over
will be
a
my
decade.
first cycle with him. So I recorded drums, re-recorded drums for clarity. So that was fun.
That was an
I will be
experience.
sure to buy new drum heads in the next 2 weeks. So Sweetwater, if you're listening,
Yeah.
I need to do hi-hats tomorrow too. So
Wow.
I realized I got
ooh,
a crack.
this is going swimmingly then.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, I need to have matching.
We do have the one endorsement if you're okay with Aquarian heads. So,
Ooh.
yeah, there you go.
The stunned silence. That
Yeah.
I was like,
Did
my
you know
brain's
that?
going who?
Yeah, Aquarian.
Because I almost said Agazarian.
No, Aquarian.
Because I was like, okay, I need a China 18-inch Agazarian. If you can find that eBay, like wherever you can find it,
Yeah.
please send it.
You were only hearing what you wanted to
Yeah.
hear. And
Different brand.
That was actually a controller sound.
Yep.
I stole that from Brandon. I love the sound,
yeah, nice.
and I went, okay, I'm going to buy one.
And that was a one and done because that was the only time you found it.
No, I bought a second one. I'm on my second one,
Okay.
but now, it's discontinued because.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
I think that brand's sick.
Oh, no.
Anyway.
no.
That's a whole other rabbit hole.
Yep. So, Austin,
Yes, sir.
would you like to kind of fill everybody in about your recollection of how you became affiliated with us?
See, there's three sides of the story, right?
Yeah.
There's Austin's, there's controllers, and then there's whatever muddled truth. Is that
then
what
there's
Yeah.
Steve's
And there-
secret truth?
Yeah. There's just some truth sprinkled in all of
one
those.
night in band camp? No,
Yep.
wait.
No, I would say, how it all began is like when I was just starting really in my studio. I mean, I've had just little home studios and bedrooms and stuff over the years and long time, for a long time. I mean, I was kind of ground floor into a lot of the MIDI stuff, and so just kind of built up a studio, acquiring equipment and robbing my future for at least 2 decades.
Welcome to musicianship.
And if
The
you're
other side
not a
of it, yeah.
musician, well, that you're going to
don't-
have to subscribe to that life because
You don't know the pain financially.
And the things that you don't see, it's not just hardware. It's not just microphones. All the kind of those are the sexy things, right?
Oh, is it plugins?
It's
Is it plugins?
It's plug-in.
It's software,
Put.
right? And like,
Yeah.
Put.
and
It's plugins.
if you look at a lot of modern studios, a lot of home studios are not what they used to be. I mean, there were trailblazers back in the day. The guy from Boston, the guitarist. I think
Yep.
his last name's Schultz, but for some reason his first name is escaping.
But yeah, he had a full production studio at home.
Yeah, and I think he was an MIT grad.
Yep.
He
He almost needed it back then.
and he worked for Kodak. I mean, this was a smart dude. and a hell of a guitar player, and he kind of, I don't know that he was the first to do this, but a lot of the guitar parts and everything that you hear on a lot of those old Boston records are in his home studio in the 70s. I mean, so this has been going on a long time.
We're talking reel to reel.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Cut and tape.
And
where you're literally there with the X-Acto knife on your edits.
With modern technology, it's allowed us to be able to put or to output professional grade quality and things in a bedroom, in a house, and who Billie Eilish, Phineas, those have so many views and listens. It's in the billions, son.
Billions.
And they did a lot of stuff with a cheap mic in a hotel room or in a bedroom, and so the game has changed.
On a different genre. That's how Mark Ribble started. He was just doing some podcast and mixing beats and singing and grabbing a trumpet and just tooling around, and it caught.
Because it's kind of what's the hierarchy of quality, right? And as a producer, what we always say, the number one thing is the player, right?
Yes.
So kick Steve out of the band.
Yeah. I mean, I've only been arguing this for years, but for some reason, because I'm the business contact.
We keep them around, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so the hierarchy is generally it's the player and then the instrument, or you could marry those two together. So you want to have a good instrument to play, everything set up nicely, and that your skill is up to snuff, and that's the most important thing. And it doesn't matter if you're using the highest grade Avid systems or or Focusrite Scarlett. A lot these things, yes, you could say, oh, that's a cheap piece of gear,
right?
But if you are good,
if you can make it work for the thing that you want it to do.
Literally the third time I've had this conversation in 3 days about gear and cost.
Yeah,
because people have asked me about drums. I'm not a gearhead at all.
Yeah.
Wait. What's your typical line? I'm just a drummer.
I'm not.
I remember that. I don't remember if it was like a musician's friend thing. I just remember there was this great thing in a catalog. It's some product. I don't know what it said, but it was what it was selling. But it said something like, "This product is great for musicians and drummers." And I was that's how I read it in my brain. That's not what they meant. They were just saying, hey, this also could work on drums too. And forgive me, I don't remember what the product was, but I just remember that.
But they had a perfect marketing campaign.
Oh, man. And just made me so happy. I wish it said, this is great for all musicians and Steve.
But to your point, the instrumentation and the player can make that sound.
We can get to where the animosity and love between these two are.
Is it happening?
We'll get that.
Is it happening?
It's happening. No,
Contrøller.
But my point is, so once you get the player and the instrument correct, and that sounds great, then the next thing in the chain is generally the microphone, or if it's direct in or whatever you're doing, and then it's, say, the preamp, and then it's the converter that then converts all that signal into zeros and ones,
right,
and so forth, and that's the chain.
Can I interject though? I mean, I understand the logic of that chain.
Yeah.
However, I personally agree with the first two steps: the instrumentation, the player.
Sure.
I personally think, and this might just be me coming from a band background, but I personally believe that the third chain really should always be in a trusted second set of ears.
Oh,
because
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Because you can be classified as a good player. You can think you have good equipment and everything, but if you don't have that second set of trusted ears, there's a lot of times where you might be putting something out to where you have the good gear, you have the abilities,
good gear,
but you're not putting out a good song.
Yep, that's exactly
to where
right.
If you have that your third step is a good trusted person to lean on and be like, not even that they themselves are a musician, but somebody that you trust. Is this good?
Yeah, and trust, that's the big word, right? Because, generally, as we're trying to produce and make a song, nobody is intentionally trying to put out something bad. I mean, I can't say it. Maybe some
I'm a 9/11 boy. Wait.
No. That is not intentionally bad. That is intentionally comical.
Yeah. Yes. and that's the thing. I mean, there's parody and all these different kinds of things, but generally, we're generally trying to make good art, and it's just difficult. But the beauty and what I love and have grown to love even more as time has gone on is that music is a collaborative process generally.
Yes.
And That's why an author has beta readers. That's why they have an editor. That none of this is born in a vacuum, and there's nothing scarier than a blank page, right? And so when you have help from guys that have different skill sets, that's why I'm trying to use.
You keep turning your head. Because you're talking to Steve.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not subscribed, he's talking at Steve. I mean, with Steve.
Yeah. I see. I see.
So
what
when
you're
you
saying.
turn your head,
there you go.
leave the mic, but you got to leave. Yeah, you go.
No, I got it.
Where apparently it's a guitarist thing, apparently.
Is that better?
Now you need to subscribe to Patreon just to see what just happened.
Yeah, I get excited. It's what it is.
Yep.
Now where was I?
Sorry.
But you were...
No, it's good. I wanted to sound good. That's kind of the point, right?
Right,
yeah.
right.
But that's kind of all coming back to it. Yes, it is the collaborative effort if, in my opinion, it's done right. Because can you make music by yourself in a vacuum and put it out? Yeah. I mean, that's kind of become the way of the walk, where you got the laptop, warrior with 2 monitors, and that's that. Because you can get all the software now where you don't even need live instrumentation to plug into an interface.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing with some live sound now. You mentioned that, and I'm like, we don't have, like, you have a pedal board, but you don't need an amp.
Yeah.
Like, it's all digital. It's all digital signal.
My back has loved the evolution of technology over these years. Because, I mean, the last tour we rolled on, we didn't bring any amps. We didn't bring any cabs. It was just, we were rolling direct on everything.
Yeah.
And it made, consistency of sound amazing. Because we didn't have to worry if the guy knew how to mic a cab, didn't know how to mic a cab.
Well, an amp pad changes day to day. You don't know if you're going to get exactly the same sound.
Even
as a matter of fact,
digital.
You're guaranteed to not get the exact same sound. I've had times in the studio where I've been using, I have an 83 JCM 800 head that is phenomenal. But I've had a time where I've recorded that I didn't change the cab, I didn't touch it. The next day, it was dark. The settings were exactly the same.
Yep.
Why?
But it just warmed differently that time.
I don't, that just is the nature of the beast. Whereas if you're using, Axe Effects, or you're using Kempers or Helix or anything like that.
Yeah, but kind of coming back to where we ended up connecting and everything like that.
I was going to say, is this going to trail back around somewhere?
So kind of rounding this back to where we connected, where Contrøller and Austin first became a couple.
We love you.
Continue.
Wait, no, we're still waiting on his side of the story. How did you?
Oh no. He had his time.
His story, your story, the real story.
He's just going to drag on. He's off in like left field
here. I'm interested.
So ultimately, what ended up happening, at least on the Contrøller side of the whole story, was we had done the demo EP with Temple Recording Studio because I had like previous affiliation from an internship there.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bad experience, but it wasn't ultimately when we decided, we're going to do an album.
Yeah.
Ultimately what we were wanting. We didn't feel comfortable in the environment. It wasn't what we were looking for. So it was, I know at that point in time there was a good few different home studios going on, but I didn't know who was doing what price point. So it was actually just a blind Google search. I just simply put in recording studios, Fort Wayne, Indiana, just to see what was actually still technically listed as open at that point.
And that's good to know.
And apparently after, and Austin can clarify this, but if I remember correct, I thought he informed me that he had just about a month prior dropped a pin on Google Maps for his business to technically exist on there. So had I jumped the gun and just, let's start preemptively looking for studios, I very well may have never actually stumbled on 1521 as even an
option.
option.
All in the timing.
Yeah. And when I hit him up, it's like, so we're kind of poor.
Which is what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Like the 20-second listing, but it's still there.
Is it still there? Yeah. I mean, it's undergone a lot of changes.
Just to note, the Juggernaut that's in town is like 6th, so...
Yeah.
Really?
But...
congratulations.
Yeah,
I've always
you're not that far down.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, part of the studio allure has always kind of been like, this is a a secret of Fort Wayne. You know,
Yeah.
I don't actively really try to get a bunch of bands in. That's never really been my MO. I mean, because we're in, let's face it, we're in Sweetwater's backyard, right?
That was. I had a question. Go
Okay,
ahead.
do you want me to continue?
Yep, continue.
Okay. And all I was going to say
anchor on
was that when somebody thinks of Fort Wayne music, they think of Sweetwater. That's
Yes.
just the reality of it, and I don't see that as a good or bad thing. I just see that as that's what it is.
It's almost turned into, with how big Sweetwater has become, it's almost turned into, that's what people think of when it comes to music in the Midwest.
Yeah, and you know, worldwide they've become, you know, quite the juggernaut themselves, and you know, they have these great, you know, beautiful studios and all that. But the difference is that when you are a band that has gotten serious and you really want to improve and you want to make a run, and you know this is how you want to how you want to approach your art. You don't want to cut corners. You're willing to put in the work now.
Yep.
It's a different mindset, and that's what a producer is. We always hear these horror stories of, oh, this band or this artist doesn't get along with this producer, and they're just because they were destroying that artist's art, you know, and then that's a bad relationship.
Yeah, well, and I want to also throw this in there, too, for everybody who's not aware of this. So there are different types of jobs, if you will, that happen on the back end of all of this that aren't technically part of the band. You have your producer, but you also have your engineers.
Yeah.
And just because you've gone to a studio that has somebody who understands how to record and makes does not mean that you hired on a producer.
Correct.
That means you definitely hired on an engineer.
Yeah.
Well, I will say our first time, it wasn't a producer relationship.
Correct.
It was an engineer
Yeah,
relationship.
probably an
I
hourly
can relate
rate,
to that.
you know. And
Although he did give us a few pointers, like
Sure.
here and there, giving us lessons as musicians,
yeah,
Yes.
but he wasn't there to produce our album.
But that's the big thing I think that really appealed when we sat down for our first meeting talking about coming in to record the first album, is it was very evident right away we were in a conversation not just from an engineering standpoint, but an actual producer standpoint.
It's a very different dynamic.
And it was something that was very needed for us because we were about a year old, year and a half old at that point
Yeah,
in
you're
time.
still
And it's
finding
like,
yourself.
We don't
Yeah.
know exactly where we're going with this. Will you be?
So that's the
And
difference between, like, you called it the ones and zeros. So an engineer is like, okay, we're gonna here's the music. We're gonna make sure everything's normalized, everything's level, nothing's standing out.
Mm-hmm.
It all sounds balanced. But a producer's like, okay, how are we gonna shape this song? What do you guys have that's created that we can work with? And I've had a recording experience where they're like, okay, it'd be cool if we had a little bit of feedback here.
Sure.
Let's shape this with the guitar and do a little bit of tweaking here. Like, it was more than just laying down your tracks and then they just make sure it doesn't
Correct.
sound like crap.
Oh, I don't think there has been one session with this guy to where I have not had to rewrite a bass part, at least for one song.
Well, yeah, or
Within compromise, because you said you can take this or leave it or whatever. There's a lot of times tonight you were giving input.
No. Back then it's like, you need to change this
Austin
part.
was ironclad.
well, and there's
back then,
even
huh?
still those
He's
type of
gotten soft
things.
since he's a dad now. Is that what it is?
Well, I think honestly a big part of that has to do with the fact that we're able to send him actual cuts of things a lot more
Well, this
advanced.
was even like Pinocchio.
Yeah.
My bass line was mimicked on keys, and when keys came in and started doing it, my bass line actually had to get cut down to a simpler version.
Because it was overwhelming the key
Yes.
part and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole role.
That's a producer. That would be something
But
Austin did.
he wasn't hired on for producer. It's just he gives Steve's hell all the time.
That's
and then
Steve
he'll
That
deserves
seems
it.
to be the recurring.
and
I'm
then
sorry, man. That's
he'll poke the
that's
bass. He'll poke the bassist every now and then.
Yeah.
Austin the hard ass is what I'm hearing every
And I think-
story.
Well, it's
sometimes you
because
have-
the songs, though, needed that.
Yeah, sometimes
They
you
really
have to
did.
be, because if you're hiring a producer who works well with you, the whole point of hiring a producer, the whole point of hiring a producer is to, like, my job as a producer is to get the best result out of what I'm given.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Well,
that's,
it reflects on you.
yeah. Well,
It
yeah,
does.
that's why there have been times where I have told, and it comes across as being kind of a dick, right? But it's like, where it's like, I won't put my name on this. I won't do it because it's not up to a level that is where I know it could be, and that usually resonates with people because it's one of those things that bands who are used to writing music and kind of going with their flow, this is a whole different world.
Well, yeah,
and you have to kind of accept.
Well, and that's why like our second project with you on, we were like, you were on as producer. You're not just engineer because you took us to school on our first album.
Yes. Well, I mean, honestly, and this is something I do want to say that I think was also very prevalent even on that first album. And I'm not trying to diminish where you had already had previously and all that stuff, because I know you had your time in LA and I know you'd also done other things. But at the same time, this was a new layout for you.
Yeah.
You were just trying to like get your feet wet into the 1521 type thing.
Still
to where, and I think honestly that
so are we.
Yeah, I think honestly,
Never
if you're doing this long enough, you realize that you're never done trying to figure it out. But at that point, we were very. I mean, we as musicians weren't greenhorns. We as a band were greenhorns. You as an engineer, you were not by any stretch a greenhorn, but with 1521.
Yeah, I was very new and learning that room and everything, and that's just the same thing. That's why this band is such a special thing for my studio, because you guys came in on such an early time where I was still
we were only like the second or third band that the studio ever got.
It was, and there were things that I did well back then, things I didn't do well at all. I was still learning.
Austin, how about some bass?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you listen to some of those very early recordings, like, oh man, it was like mid-range and kind of harsh mid-highs and stuff like that. But it's one of those things that it's kind of like being an athlete. You don't just overnight become good at something.
No.
It takes reps and reps, and they say it's like 10,000 hours. Well, I got like 30,000 hours into this, and I still feel like there's I'm not even close.
You even went out of country just to try to figure out some more stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's what it is. It's a process, and we're always if you
it's evolving too.
Yeah,
yes.
Like we were just talking about live sound, like going all digital. Like it's continually evolving, and
its studio's even faster and more rapid pace than live sound ever has been.
If you ever get into the point where you do not consider yourself a student anymore,
You're
out.
done.
You're
done.
And there has been time. I mean, I should say the thing is, when you're working with artists or a producer, we all have egos, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
If you don't have an ego, I almost don't even take you seriously. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't care about
keep in mind, there is a certain level of ego.
There's a point at which
we're not talking Axl Rose level.
There's a difference between having
narcissistic.
Yeah, there's a difference between having confidence and just being so rigid that you're not willing to work to make things better for everybody. And that is my entire job. And there were times where I was way too rigid on things. You know what I mean? Like, I thought I knew, but
even like my Octa recording.
Well, I was just talking about that today with my wife. I was like, Steve did something really stupid once, and in the end, it was like, that was awesome.
Yeah, I listened to Putt. That's what I did stupid.
Yeah.
So on the second album, Putt had this new novel concept. We're going to make the guitar the fattest sounding guitar we have ever done. We are going to record 4 separate tracks per side.
Yeah, that was dumb.
So 4 on one side, 4 on the other, and it's not like it was a copy paste. I had to perfectly play each time for that to exist.
It does have a sound.
It has a sound. It has a sound of pain.
It has a sound of pain, and
with every track you listen to, you can hear the crying.
That's the beautiful thing, and why I feel like this is all.
That's a beautiful thing.
Again, the animosity that Chad was referring to earlier, it started there.
Yes. The beautiful thing that I made Steve kind of my little lab rat.
A lot of it is also like your guitar background as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's my main.
Another aspect that we did not already elaborate is Putt has a degree in guitar.
Well, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
There is that. Well, yeah, so I have a tendency to pick on guitarists. Steve
really?
specifically.
Steve specifically. That's why they go out for beers together, too. So...
Well, even in talking like the drums today, you were trying to you were helping me shape some of the things we were talking about and trying to pick up on what I was doing, so you understand where the drums are filling in and helping support the vocals and the guitars. So I mean, that's part of being the producer and not the engineer, not letting it just ride out the way it is. Because I've been in that recording situation where we've thrown down a couple tracks. We're in that one big room with those people that like we had like 9 hours to get it done, and they cranked us out, but they didn't really have any input.
Yeah, they don't care what you're doing in those 9 hours. They just said you have 9 hours. This is up to you, type thing.
Yeah, well, as we said, there's a difference. Like if you're running a recording studio and you're hourly, you book somebody in for some time. That's it. I'm going to get in trouble here. You know what I mean by people, but the truth is, when you get to a certain level and you want a certain product, you can't. If you're thinking about it just like, oh, we have a 3-hour booking, for this, and we're paying this amount, there is a level of separation, and we're not a team at that point. Sorry, we're not a team at that point.
Yeah, you're so focused on a deadline and a timeline instead of the actual art.
Yeah.
And we've been in that boat before, and it's horrible.
There should be a deadline, but you should never be worried like, oh my gosh, I got to chug this part out, or no.
All 8 tracks real quick.
Yeah, right now.
Or the other part that I mean, our first album was done in a weekend.
Yeah. But
I mean, it sounds the way it does, and the new stuff sounds the way.
Yeah, but at the same time, the rush on the hourly and everything like that, it not only gives you I got to hurry up, it makes you sign off on things you would never sign off on.
Yeah.
It makes you go, I guess we'll let it fly.
Yeah.
Fly it, because I don't have the opportunity.
Yeah.
I know what I still have to do.
Yeah. And I want you to listen to this, whatever record we make, a year from now and go, that's it. Instead of listening to it and being like, oh, man.
Well, and it's because of that time that, like you're talking about, that in my opinion, we got the attention of the record label that we did to be able to get the deal that we did, was because we sat there, we considered all the production end of everything. We considered, is this song doing what the song needs to do? And
you were willing to work. And that's the big thing. When a band actually buys into the actual process of making a professional record, it's different.
Yes.
It's a different workflow that I'm not going to get into here, but the funny thing is, it is more work, but it's almost worse doing it the other way, in my opinion.
Well, it's more work the first time. It's less work once you've figured out the workflow.
Yeah.
When you've learned the workflow and you know the expectations.
Expectations.
Yeah.
That's the number
you
one
just
thing.
walk in and you go, here's my cable, plug in, let's go.
Yep.
And that's that. Oh, I know. That's why I already restarted. Okay. So we're on a part 2 here coming up.
There you go.
So
for that example, it's just time. Well, it's gone.
Oh, sorry.
But like even tonight, with the pre-production meeting, Steve's got a bunch of notes, so he's got some information, and we've all taken some information down. But at one point, Chad actually breaks out the bass and the amp, and Steve gets up and gets the guitar, and I've got the click going, and Bob's singing, and we're, instead of just being a meeting and like, oh, let's discuss, like we're actually working it out. Yeah.
So. Get this track figured out. Get the notes that we needed to make it.
Because it's going to make it easier come recording time.
Oh yeah,
and that's the other thing. We're doing what we were going to end up having to do later on anyway. But if we have the instruments right here, right now, why waste the time? And we'll get to that later.
Yeah. And I can't stress enough just how different when you're starting to record, instead of just being like, I have an idea for a song, let's go to a studio and record the song, as opposed to let's make a production.
Yes.
And how many times have I said, guys, let's do something, or if you have an idea for the song, and if you're thinking like, oh, we shouldn't do it because we can't do it live. That used
to be our old mindset.
Oh yeah, that used to be a mindset.
It's a totally valid mindset. It depends what you're wanting to do. Are we watching, for example, it's the same for movies. Like, are we watching an action movie? Are we watching Lord of the Rings? Or are we watching like Annie Hall? These are very different styles of movies that we're talking about, and both are valid.
Funny enough, because of a situation like that, our song Clarity, Jeff was the one that went and recorded the secondary vocals in the chorus.
That had never in any way, shape, or form had an original plan to be in there. They got developed.
They got developed in
decided
the studio.
on in there.
So then he turns to me. He's like, I can't do it live because I'm too busy on the keyboard, can you do the vocals?
Yeah.
I'm like, I will try.
Yeah, live you make it work, and of course you want to be as good as you possibly can live, but the way I approach, and it's a decision you got to make before going in. Do we want to make this almost as if it's a live feeling, or are we trying to make a production? Yeah. Both are valid.
Yeah, and you just don't want to get to the point where you rely on the laptop when you play live. We haven't mentioned any bands.
Yeah.
But if you can't, like, there is a level of, like, okay, some things are getting dropped off because they're playing it live. They're really only a 5-piece or whatever.
And that's understandable.
But if suddenly you're like, okay, well, we can't do anything because everything is on a hard drive.
Well, I mean,
exactly.
We've gotten to the point where me and him have gone in back and forth and everything like that, where I'm going in with my primary riff. We're coming up with secondary melody riffs and everything like that. And then for live application, I then will come back after the whole recording's done, and I will do a Frankenstein version of the riff where it's like, okay, I am playing for the first 4 bars the original riff I brought in. Then I'm switching over to that top melody line for it, just so that way I can kind of get the best of all worlds. What was the part in the song, like we were kind of talking in our pre-pro meeting earlier, what part of the song, what instrument was the most focal? What was the top line?
What is the singing voice that you hear?
What is your ear go-to as a listener? And it could be different for many people, but there's a reason why certain songs, in the past and in the future, have these kind of timeless melodies, things that you can hum. I mean, and as a side note, I always say, like, what's the hook? And why is this song so big? Well, it's catchy, and my catchphrase is always, catchy doesn't mean good. It means catchy.
It's catchy.
And that's kind of my dickish producer mindset.
Well, no, and that's true, though.
But there is something to be said for catchy earworms, right? And that's what I'm always trying to look for. Like, what is the hook? What is the thing that's going to grab a listener? And it could be a riff, but generally, if a vocal is singing, there's a reason why vocals are almost right up the front, and your ear immediately goes to them, and it's because everybody has that instrument.
Well, and
in them.
Something I want to also stress to everybody who's in a band out there that might be listening to this. You're so far from just a drummer. But something that I want to overly stress that I recommend everybody that is in a band that's serious about trying to do it. This is not for the people who are just enjoying it, having fun, doing the weekend warrior show type thing. And if they made $5 and got a pitcher of beer, then they're happy with it, and that's that. If you're honestly trying to do something with this, get a label to pay attention to you go get management, something, whatever. If you're trying to take this to the next level, get yourself a producer that you can trust. And I say this because when you are in the echo chamber of the band and you're in the rehearsal room, you will sign off on things, the 4, 3, 5, however many of you there are. You will sign off on things that you should not sign off on. And you need that producer's ear because they're not attached to it as emotionally as you are.
Yeah.
And the second that you get a trustworthy, non-emotionally attached ear actually focus on the song is when the things that sucked can get fixed, and the things that you were hopeful were good, like an earworm or a hook, might actually be validated then.
Yeah.
And I agree, even as a drummer, there's a lot of times, and even some songs I mentioned today, that I have to work on technically so I can bring them live, but like I hear this, but I can't physically do it right now. I need to keep working at it and keep getting to it. But do I want to do something a little more technical? Having a producer or having somebody outside be like, hey, why don't you do this? I hear this in this part. Why don't you change this up? And then trying to lay it down versus like, okay, I'm happy with it because
it was a clean take. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and I understand that. And again, that's the whole purpose of a producer. It's supposed to be a collaborative process, and there is a reason why every band that you like that's kind of bigger and stuff like that, there's always a producer. And for whatever reason, there's been kind of a negative connotation to that because you've heard the horror stories of bands having breakups with their producers, and sometimes you got to have a different producer, and that doesn't ever
and sometimes
bother me.
You try and realize you were with the right one in the first place.
That's just the way it goes. I mean, there's no problem with that. It's a relationship you're trying to find, and you, like I was talking about with egos, you have to have an ego, but also be open to like the ideas like you were talking about. Like, oh, I'm hearing this idea here. You should do that. There's a reason why a producer will say, this would work here because that's their job to know that.
Yes.
You know, and that's the reason you're hiring them. But that ultimately doesn't mean that your idea originally or whoever's idea it wasn't valid or we shouldn't try it. A good producer will try something.
Right.
I'm just not going to do the butt rock thing. I'm just going to say that.
That's totally fine.
I have a whole other project.
Right.
Just like, yeah.
And that's fine. It's working within the framework of what everybody wants and what everybody's comfortable with, and also making a great product that everybody can be proud of.
Chad, I need you to rewrite your part.
Not gonna lie, I'm seething right now.
Oh God, that we'll have an episode at some point in time where we'll talk about the highlight moments of all the recording studio experiences, and kind of elaborate a little bit more on that one, because that was a beautiful story.
Well,
but
that is a beautiful story.
The point to that, and you know, that was Chad kind of having a moment. But the reason why it happens,
he had a moment.
We all have these moments, especially singers, because it's such a personal thing.
Yes.
That if I told you, hey Steve, you made a mistake on that beat 3 of bar 87 or whatever, you'd be like, oh yeah, I hear it. Okay, let's do it again. Yep. But if I tell a singer in the booth, hey, you messed up this one part, you just told them that they're a mess up, they're a screw up. That's how they internalize it, and I understand that. And it's so funny because as a producer, I'm just trying to make it better. So I'm like, hey, no, that wasn't good. Let's do this again. And there's a way you need to talk to people differently, and singers are different. And here's the funny thing, Steve.
But we also figured out sometimes a good cop, bad cop is the best plan.
Yeah. But here's the thing: when I go in the booth and try to sing parts myself, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I'm a scared little boy, you know.
Oh, dude, I hate going in the vocal booth.
I am dreading
booth.
dreading hitting those secondaries for this next.
Red light syndrome was a
exposing.
thing.
It's just you're so vulnerable in there.
Well, and especially when, and I will say this, and this isn't going to be everybody's experience, but when you're in a situation like we're in, where you're in an actual isolated control booth, it is a whole separate feeling than when you're just in a wide open room.
Oh yeah.
When you're in a double doored sealed room where you can feel the air pressure physically change.
It does feel weird in a
try doing it in a room with no windows. Like you don't have a window, you don't have a double pane glass.
Yeah. No, and I get that there's worse circumstances and better circumstances, but I mean, when you're in a legitimate isolation booth, it is a whole separate, like, pressurized feeling on your lungs.
Yeah, it does actually feel different.
Yeah,
it does.
than when you're just in a wide open room. Or I'm not saying anybody who's had to actually record vocals, it's not intimidating. It's intimidating no matter how big wide open the room is, how many people, how few people. But when you can physically feel the barometric pressure change on your lungs.
And another side to that, too, is vocal booths are typically dead on purpose, acoustically dead, and we're not even down here. You're hearing reflections off the wall.
Yep.
You're hearing a natural decay of sound all around, and we're used to that. You go into a vocal booth. Yeah, I'm an animated guy. I'm all over.
See,
you know,
it's not just me.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's why we did the ears.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I heard it, I would have known. But I should have put ears in. I'm sorry, guys.
You gotta come back.
But my point is, when you go into that booth, it is a sound that you're just not used to, and that's why some people want like some of the artificial reverb pumped in.
Yes,
you know, to make it.
Oh yeah, Bob always wetens up the signal
at least a little bit, and because it's just such a mind, you know.
Scramble. Yeah, mind scramble.
Mind uck.
Mind uck. Yeah, so we say F to the uck. Yeah. So
it is really weird, and everybody who I've ever had come into the studio who's never experienced it before, they all say the same thing.
Oh, it is one of the most intimidating feelings.
And it is not like playing live. That's why you hear the term recording artist, because they're used to that. They're a professional at that aspect of it.
Yes.
And that could be this case for a studio musician, you know, Steve Lukather, a guy like that playing guitar, or, you know, a recording artist that you've heard any of these singers, they're good at that.
Yes.
And it is a different skill set.
Oh, completely.
Or at least has different aspects. You know?
Yeah, and and obviously people can cross-pollinate and become awesome at live and from studio and all that stuff, but yeah, I mean, with us, it's definitely gotten easier over the years. But I will say, I think that to your point of when you recognize that you want to do this at a pro level with how you're approaching walking into the studio. Obviously, we are far from the same tier of like the big dog bands out there that are walking into the multi-million-dollar studio with all the baffles that have been fully like customized, built for that, to have that acoustic treatmenting and blah 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 blah. But I will say, from somebody who has recorded in a multitude of different styles of studios, from the guy who renoed his garage but barely put up the mattress for soundproofing, quote unquote, to the like I've recorded in the bedroom with the laptop, the little crappy monitors and an interface, all the way to I've recorded in both the original Bass Road location of Sweetwater and the new location, both times in Studio A's. And it is an intimidating feeling, but it's also a very, at least for me personally, a very uncomfortable feeling when I've recorded at the extra elevated level studios. And I'm not saying that everybody feels
you're
that
not
way.
No, you're not alone
but
on that.
I don't think that that's the minority, if you will, of people where they don't necessarily want to be in such a grand room, because I almost feel like every time I've recorded in that level of studio, I'm in the grandma's house where you better not touch the china the wrong way or something's gonna break. And I'm like, if I'm here trying to be creative, trying to be inspired, the last thing I want going through my head is, can I sit there? Did I lean against something wrong? Did I accidentally touch the wrong button? Did I screw everything up?
You're recording on a $3,000 microphone. You're like, oh.
Yeah, there is something to that. And I remember hearing a story. It's funny, I'm mentioning this guy again, but Phineas from Billie Eilish, I remember him talking about a story where it's like he got so fed up with a lot of the big studios where he's like, I just want to plug my phone in so you can hear this part, or an iPod or something. I forget exactly what he said. And it would take him like a half hour to figure out how to get it coming through the speakers, where it's like you come to a lot of the small studios and stuff, like it's just like,
oh, here's an aux cord.
Yeah. I mean, and in my studio, I don't care so much about the aesthetics. Like, it looks cool in there. I mean, you go in and you feel inspired and all that kind of stuff.
Until you get rid of the couch.
Yeah,
you
couch.
Better not. We have a love seat that we love.
There's an angle that I shoot my control room in that just looks like $1 million, and then when you turn around, it's like an old love seat from like the 70s.
That is never allowed to leave the studio until Contrøller is done.
I'm going to get the classic like black leather couch, that I'm supposed to have. But
man, me and Putt had some words about that.
Because of Steve, I still have that old thing sitting there.
And right now we're still sitting on the original Jam Crib couch down here because of
take a black light to it next time I'm there.
Yeah,
Oh,
maybe.
Man.
Maybe not.
No, it's fine. Well, it's whatever you've put on there, Steve.
Oh, I am not the only band.
I'm sorry. I caused the complete diversion of what was being said.
Sorry, where were we?
I don't know.
Yeah, to kind of have a little bit more of a tie back, Putt, you've kind of heard the Contrøller side of how we found you and how that first experience was. What was your side of the whole thing? Because, I mean, obviously we'd gotten the first call going, hey, this is what we're planning to do. Can we have a meeting?
Yeah, I think it was, you had a manager at that point. He called me and just throwing feelers out there just to see what was possible. And I was like, let's have a meeting. Let's talk about it and everything. And I think everybody just kind of hit it off. We realized that this was a good fit, and
we're not going to destroy your place.
No,
and we're going to be respectful, but we can still have fun.
Yeah.
Cookies.
Yeah.
That was a plus. I'm not going to lie.
So my wife, for everybody who's unaware, a tradition at this studio is every band member gets to pick their favorite cookie type. She will make anywhere from 12 to 24 of each one of those flavors.
Every single person. And Chris is not privy to this yet, but it's coming.
I was excited earlier when we went to cookies.
Yeah, I know. I was like, cookies right now?
You will end up at a point where you despise cookies.
Yeah, it gets to be much, but I will never, ever turn them
refuse
down.
the cookies.
You learned really quick as a drummer to fend for yourself. There have been numerous shows where I've seen like guitarists get shots from women who are hitting on them. The singer gets a shot, and I'm like, hey, I still need hydration back here, so I'll bring my own snacks, okay?
Your own snacks.
Don't worry. The cookies will be provided.
The cookies will be there.
Yeah.
But yes, our producer's almost gone diabetic because of it. But
like I said, it's like became a studio zombie.
Yeah.
But Yeah, that's how it worked, and we just came in, and again, I think you guys felt like it was a different vibe than what you were used to, and I knew you guys were at a point where we can grow, and get better and learn, and that's what's happened. I mean,
if you want to see the vibes, you can check out our YouTube channel. Way down in the list, we have videos of our first session in the studio.
Yeah, we actually have studio diary stuff from the Undefined album on our YouTube channel.
I remember that.
And I mean, and I think that honestly was the selling point for me personally. I don't know about the rest of the guys, but I think that was the selling point for me personally, was when you're stating, I just got this up off of the ground. You're going to be one of the first clients, and us going, good. Because it's not that we don't understand our instruments, we don't understand how to be in a band, but this band, we have no clue ultimately what we're trying to accomplish sonically with this.
Yeah, you were figuring out who you were.
Are you on board to kind of help cultivate that?
Absolutely, and that's the producer mindset, right? Because back then it was like, did I even consider myself a producer or just an engineer, as we talked about? And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, that's why I've kind of loved this project.
You sold us as an engineer when we first had the meeting. You did not offer producer type mentality. It wasn't until we were in it.
What my skill set ultimately became, and and it's not for everybody. It's just, like I said, it's a different skill set, and now these days,
I also think it's how close you want to have a relationship with the artists you're working with.
But we were talking about the kind of the dichotomy in the past between a producer and an engineer.
Yes.
Well, those lines have been very blurred in the last.
All
decade.
lines in the music industry have become one blur.
Very different. There used to be different people were wearing different hats, and now one person is wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah, I mean, that's even just not even from a audio standpoint. That's at a full, like, we're doing video stuff. But yeah, I mean, not even just the audio thing. Like, you got to understand video editing. You got to understand marketing. You got to understand.
You have to have a brand, and you have to conquer social media.
Oh, we have talked about bands being a business and building that brand.
You have to treat it as such.
Go back to podcast. What? Like everyone?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a big part that a few episodes back that I had brought up of, you never want your entire band to consist of everybody being good at the same thing. You don't want all creatives. You don't want all marketing. You don't want all artsy fartsy guys. You want
diversity is good, guys. Yeah. Like, and this is the case in skill sets. I mean, every band has a person who's a type and another person who's another type, and that's the way it goes, all the way to a producer type. And some guys in bands have had that kind of role. The band I've been kind of following lately, we've been talking about, is Spirit Box.
Yes.
And one thing I have learned is that at one point their producer was their roommate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So imagine having that
that intimate knowledge.
Yeah, that they are together, and through the pandemic, he produced a lot of some of their biggest songs on a laptop in
thousands of miles away
in a living room.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. And we were talking about the vocal booths and stuff. I think she even put her in one of those her
husband had built,
I forget what they're called, but
and her husband had built 2 mattresses and a few blankets.
Yeah. You do what you got to do. We're so used to looking in studios and seeing, the millions of dollars in acoustic treatment, and that has value, but a lot of it's aesthetic too.
Yes.
You can still, in my studio, I like I said, I've really robbed my future guys.
We know,
to have
and
all
we
this gear.
Thank you for it.
And,
we do.
And so the chain, the quality of the chains that I have are what you would get at a big time studio. I just don't have millions of dollars for all the crazy big
the treatment and the looky stuff,
all the aesthetics and all that. And there.
But being honest, like that point earlier that I was making, though, that's a good thing, at least for me personally. I don't want those because I
want to come in feeling comfortable.
Yeah. And what's the phrase? It's like when you reduce your resources, you become more resourceful.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why. What was it? Foo Fighters. I mean, Dave Grohl built a massive studio. They could have done all this in this multi-million-dollar studio, and they did a whole record in his garage.
Yeah.
Just because.
Well, and there for the longest time, they also did the one album where, just for the heck of it, they wanted to see what flavor they could get with different studios and different producers. Mm-hmm. They recorded an entire album while they were out on tour and asking what was a good studio in the area they were in to go to. Mm. And they recorded an album where it was, I think, in 12 different studios throughout the country, and they had no previous ties to, but they wanted to get that
I like
feel.
it. I mean, it's whenever you get your, well, for example, like if you get a new guitar or a new drum kit, or you're looking at changing something up, you'll think of different ideas, like that you're outside of your comfort zone. And sometimes, like if I'm in a rut trying to write music, like, well, I'll try this acoustic guitar. Why not? And lay on my back in the dark, and all
something as simple as changing the tuning.
I mean. Yeah, exactly. I mean, changing the tuning is a big one. If I do a tuning that I've never done before, all of a sudden different ideas come out.
Yep.
So
the producer role for everybody who's considering, again, taking this to the next level, it's imperative. I can't stress it enough. It is imperative, and I can even say, I think from Austin's standpoint, because the other thing people don't know, Austin is not just a producer and a studio owner. He is also an active musician in multiple projects that play live as well. So it's not like it's a closed bubble situation where he thinks that it would work well this way. You get to actually say, well, when I do this live, and actually come from a point where it's actual real life application that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. We learn from each other. That's
well, one thing that I've taken a lot of the lessons from being in the studio with you to how I write now, and I have to look at things as, is this going to be good enough when it comes to the studio time?
Your arrangements are so much better than they were when we first started.
That was one thing I mentioned today. Like some of the parts that are in my brain that I want to do, and even in the pre-pros that we sent, I'm like, it's muddled right now, but I know that this is what I want to do, so I've got to get to that point to where when I'm in the studio in 2 weeks, that I'm ready to do the kick drum work that I want to do. And I always, even as a drummer, I write with intention. The song "Control Yourself" was specifically written to where I'm doing a lot of syncopated hi-hat stuff. I'm doing a lot of syncopated kick work. When I'm supporting the guitars, when I'm not supporting the guitars, all that's intentional, and that's something as an individual I've worked with, and working with you in the studio, I hope that you'll see that as we converse about my stuff.
Absolutely. I mean,
but also keep in mind, he will not be bashful in telling you, so
I will buy new drum heads, okay?
Well, no, not even that. That is still definitely needed, because he will say that. But I'm also talking about
new strings, new drum heads.
Yeah, but we have an endorsement now. Don't worry about the strings.
I have strings, and I make sure to take my bass to attack before I even come to you.
What an unsubtle flex by Steve there.
Oh, that was purposeful.
Yeah. But one time that I recorded on a borrowed bass because the intonation on my one bass was...
Yeah, Austin actually left the house.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
I drove him to the other place to pick up the bass.
That's right.
Yeah, we ended up recording something, I think it was on a J bass.
My bass that I owned had a small twist in the neck to where the intonation on one note that I needed to hit.
Yeah, and it just
we could not get it clean.
Work. Yeah,
no matter how it got altered in the tuning or nothing.
That reminds me of something that's interesting. Okay, we always think about like engineers of the past and producers and again, I keep saying the goal is to make things as good as they can be, but our job is to get the best result at any cost, okay? At any cost. And sometimes that cost is people's feelings.
Yep.
Sometimes that cost is money because we need a different instrument or what have you. But the thing is, like, there's always a buzz about like auto-tune, shouldn't use auto-tune, shouldn't pocket drums, we shouldn't do this, we're taking the humanity out of it and all that kind of stuff. If you only knew what engineers did even in the 60s.
Oh yeah, you and I have had long conversations about it.
I'm telling you, if you knew how many bands that you heard many times didn't actually play on their recordings.
Jokingly, we always tell everybody that Austin actually is Contrøller.
I almost had a joke earlier today when I mentioned reel to reel. I was like, "Oh, here's a spool. Take these drums and snap them to a grid."
I mean, the thing is, it's production, and it's kind of like I remember an interview with Kobe Bryant where he talked about like people want to see the dribble moves. They want to see the 360 dunk. don't want to see the work that went into it. They don't want to see me for 10 hours a day working on all this stuff.
Right.
And that's the underbelly, right? That's the thing that people don't, and we don't want them to see. They don't need to know the kind of blood, sweat, and tears that we've put into all this stuff.
Unless you post on TikTok how many times he goes through the riff on Control Yourself. Nah, 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 nah.
Okay, in my defense, you had literally just dropped that on me like 5 minutes prior to the recording of that.
But yeah, I had to take the moment. I'm like, new stuff.
Yeah. But you guys understand my point, and I think it's a valid one. Like what he was saying was like, you're putting out a product. However, whatever it took to get that product to the point where it's going to be great and successful, and people are going to like it. Whatever that took, doesn't matter. We got to do it. You know.
Yes. And I will say, to his point, something that a lot of people might, Chris included, might not like to hear. Your personal gear is not always.
Thank you for listening to Actually Controller. If you liked what you heard, please consider following us on all our socials. You can easily find us on all the different platforms by going to linktree/controller33 or scan the QR code if you are watching the video version of this episode. Thank you.